Oh, hello, come in. Come in. Ah, just sorting out the notes for some teaching I'm doing now. I'm going to. I know sometimes you quite enjoy the pipes. I'm not always smoking them then, but I happen to have. I'm going to show you the newest book in the library because I just brought it back from a conference by the publisher, which is Square Halo Press, and in fact it was launched at the conference I've just been at in Philadelphia, and here it is. It's called Ordinary Saints Living Everyday Life to the Glory of God, and Douglas McKelvey, who did the beautiful liturgical series Every Moment Holy, says a delightfully organic fleshing out of the every moment holy idea, real people communing with a real God in the midst of real lives. It looks as if I've sort of left a post-it note, unfortunately, over the face of a saint, but this in fact is the design, and it goes back, there's their little logo, to the idea of the square halo as being the sort of the sign of the ordinary saint living this life, somebody who's not been canonized by the church, but in that much deeper biblical sense that all of us kind of called into Christ are set aside in some way for him, and as saints in that sense, holy. Now, the only thing I have to do with this book, apart from the fact that this publisher also published my books, Lifting the Veil, is that they invited me to contribute an essay, and they themselves suggested there's all kinds of, if you like, everyday ordinary things that are written about and reflected on in this book. So there's everything from napping, comic books, dancing, traffic, writing, grandparenting, knitting. It's wonderful. And greying, I've done a bit of that. Anyway, they asked me to write about pipes. And it gave me a chance just to put down, it's a sort of brief essay, a familiar essay, as though I were just chatting to you, which indeed I am. But I included some poems in it as well. And so I'm going to read you my little piece on pipes. I'm going to light a pipe, of course, in order to do it. I'll tell you a bit about that. In fact, I might light the pipe just at the point where in the essay I talk about the pleasure of lighting pipes. But the other thing which came as a surprise to me when they sent me the proofs was this. If you look here, they got this wonderful woodcut and lino cut artist, Stephen Crotts, to do a picture of me here in this very study, reading an Arthurian book, because they know I'm working on my Arthur poems. Indeed, that's what I've been doing this morning. And smoking my lovely old Peterson. And they've got the cup of coffee or tea, and they've got the wisps of the smoke. And they set the window with a cross as a bit like a square halo. And they've even put one of the tobacco tins that I mention in the essay, Three Nuns, which C.S. Lewis used to like, in the drawing as well. So I'm going to you sit and relax, and particularly if you are, you're very welcome to light a pipe yourself. So I'm going to read you the essay. As I say, I may pause in the midst of it and illustrate it with what I do with the pipe. So here's Pipes, my essay in this book. I am an inveterate pipe smoker. No, inveterate is not the right word. It sounds pejorative, a concession to a weakness or a vice. On the contrary, the long, settled, rich pleasure of pipe smoking, the warm and companionable sessions given over to it, are not a vice or an indulgence, but rather a recovery of simple being in the desert wastes of doing. It is a return to the first and primal gift from God, who is being itself, and in his love and for his glory has created us. He's let us be, shared with us the gift of being. Now, naturally, we must occasionally do something, but that's usually where the trouble starts, as it did in Eden, and has continued since, until we became so foolish as to think that we are saved by our own actions, our works. And God has to once again knock us off our latest high horse, as he did with Paul, and teach us to accept everything anew by sheer grace. Of course, when I smoke my pipe, I appear to be doing something. I'm selecting the pipe, usually an old Irish Peterson. I lift my eyes from the text and say this is one of their Sherlock Holmes series, the Lestrade. I think I particularly like this shape. Usually an old Irish Peterson. I'm filling it slowly, skillfully, just at the right consistency, with tobacco that has been chosen with care for its taste, its fragrance, and its penumbra of delicate associations. Deluxe navy rolls, to recall my nautical life. 3 nuns, because it was commended by Lewis and Heaney. Troost aromatic Cavendish, because the word aromatic means comfort. Now, speaking of deluxe navy rolls, I must show you this. This is a fresh tin I've just taken. I think this is just a beautiful way. Look at this. They come in these lovely little sort of medallions that you lift up and then you crumble them and put them into the pipe. And I suppose it made them easier to keep on board ship. In fact, I think this kind of tobacco in these rolls used to be stored in kind of long things, and then the sailors sliced off the little medallions of it when they came to light their pipes. They've already sliced the medallions for you, but I think they look rather fun. Anyway, in the essay I continue. I'm lighting the pipe, delighting in the sudden miraculous flare and energy of flame as it leaps from my battered brass zipper. So I have the battered brass zipper here. This is all truly confessional stuff. So now this is very fresh tobacco. So it may take several lights and draws. I read a review of this blend, and somebody said, I think rightly, that it's got almost an aroma of baking bread. Anyway, that's just the first little toast of it. Now we'll get it going a bit better, I think. So, I'll continue then. I draw it gently. I'm letting the pipe itself and the quality of its draw settle my breathing into a rhythm proper for contemplation. And if I get to the right point of stillness, I do one other thing. I blow smoke rings. I blow them in honour of Tolkien, in honour of Bilbo and Frodo and Gandalf. I blow them for the sheer joy of summoning their form. Though we might do that a bit later, but we'll need to get the pipe going a bit better for that. Though no one exactly blows a smoke ring. Were you to be so active as to blow or even gently exhale, the poor ring would be torn to shreds. You must attain complete stillness. No slightest breath must disturb the still air before you. And then you just make an O with your lips and pop the ring out of your mouth and watch it float and expand into the air for your private pleasure and the occasional amusement of your friends. So, when I smoke a pipe, I'm active to that degree. I am admittedly doing something, but I'm only active in order to be passive. I do these little things in order at last to do nothing. And then, surprisingly, and by sheer grace in that mellow, smoky space, something of beauty is born, something for which there would have been no room if the pipe had not commanded me to relax. I put it like this once in a poem from my collection Parable and Paradox, a poem which I'm honoured to say is read at the beginning of sessions by my pipe-smoking friends in America, who form what they happily call the Brotherhood of the Briar. Now you've heard me read this poem before, but perhaps you'll humour me and hear it again. Smoke rings from my pipe. All the long day's weariness is done. I'm free at last to do just as I will. Take out my pipe, admire the setting sun, practice the art of simply sitting still. Thank God I have this briar bowl to fill. I leave the world with all its hopeless hype, its pressures, and its ever-ringing till, and let it go in smoke rings from my pipe. The hustle and the bustle, these I shun, the tasks that trouble and the cares that kill, the false idea that there's a race to run, the pushing of that weary stone uphill, the wretched iPhones, all insistent trill, whingers and whiners, each with their own gripe. I pack them in tobacco leaves until they're blown away in smoke rings from my pipe. And then, at last, my real work is begun. My chance to chant, to exercise the skill of summoning the muses one by one to meet me in their temple, touch my quill. I have a pen, but quills are better still. And when the soul is full, the time is ripe, kindle the fire of poetry that will breathe and expand like smoke rings from my pipe. Au revoir. Prince, I have done with grinding at the mill. These petty pelting tyrants aren't my type, so lift me up and set me on a hill, a free man blowing smoke rings from his pipe. Now, that poem came out in 2016, by which time I'd been smoking pipes for 40 years. But it was not the first time my muse, my smoky muse as I sometimes call her, had inspired me to celebrate the delicate and threatened art of pipe smoking. My pipes have always accompanied my poetry, in that I was often smoking, in meditation, a meditative pipe when I put pen to paper, for I smoke when I compose, as Tennyson, Mark Twain, C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien did before me. But it was when I came to write a poem about a country walk, in which I had hoped to celebrate the four ancient elements of earth, air, water and fire, that my pipe appeared for the first time in a poem, rather than simply sustaining and inspiring the poet. A rainy spring day, amid gust of winds and on squelchy muddy fields, took care of the first three elements. But what of fire? Here's how it came out in my poem Out in the Elements, a poem written in Spenserian stanzas from 2013's Singing Bowl. As rain recedes, I pause to fill my pipe and kindle fire that flickers into light and lights the leaf all curled and cured and ripe within a burr-starred bowl. How fierce and bright it glows against the cold, and I delight in taste and fragrance, watching wisps of grey and graceful smoke in their brief flight. A sun breaks through the clouds and lights my way. I feel the fire that makes the light, that makes the day. So that slightly longer final line, the hexameter, which is what the Spenserian stanza particularly excels in. A bit too moist this tobacco. Well, now, I do indeed feel the fire that makes the light, that makes the day. And there's something wonderful and paradoxical as you draw smoke and the embers in the bowl of your pipe glow, to feel for a moment that you are holding fire itself, cupped in your hands. I sometimes sense that for me, that little blaze is the burning bush that God has sent to get me finally to turn aside, like Moses to the lit bush, to take off my shoes from off my feet and listen to him for a change, to remember that I stand on holy ground. I've spoken of pipe smoking so far in its mode of solitary contemplation, but it is also, when it's allowed to be, an immensely companionable thing. And I speak not just of what Lewis celebrated in his essay on friendship, when he gives us a hint of what it must have been like when the Inklings settled into a pub after a long walk together, took out their pipes for one of their golden sessions. Here's what Lewis says. These are the golden sessions, when 4 or 5 of us after a hard day's walk have come to our inn, when our slippers are on, our feet spread out towards the blaze and our drinks at our elbows, when the whole world and something beyond the world opens itself to our minds as we talk, and no one has any claim or any responsibility for another, but all are freemen and equals, as if we had first met an hour ago, while at the same time an affection mellowed by the years, enfolds us. Life, natural life, has no better gift to give. Who could have deserved it? But there is a further companionship in pipe smoking. It's a fellowship with the past, a kind of communion of saints, of ordinary saints, the pipe smokers of former times, who form, for me at least, a literary lineage. I've mentioned some of these writers already. Indeed, the next published poem of mine, with a pipe in it, was a celebration of Tolkien, the writer who inspired me to take up the pipe in the first place. It was occasioned by a wonderful photograph of Tolkien, leaning back to an oak tree and smoking his pipe. And that poem was called Patterns, Tree and Leaf. Here it is. Tolkien is leaning back into an oak, old, gnarled, distinct in bowl and burr, as from the burr and bowl of his old pipe, packed with tightly patterned shreds of leaf, the smoke ascends in rings and wreaths of air to catch the autumn light and meet such leaves as circle through its wreaths and patter down in patterns of their own to the rich ground. Again, he contemplates the tree of tales, the roots of language in its rings of growth. The tongue and tail and teller all coeval, and he becomes a pattern, making patterns. A tale, telling tales and turning leaves, from the print of thumb and finger on his pipe to the print and press and pattern of his books, and all their prints and imprints in our minds, out to this grainy, patterned photograph of Tolkien, leaning back into an oak. So I'm going to leave you with a final, yet unpublished poem, very appropriate for a Sherlock Holmes pipe. Conan Doyle's hero Sherlock Holmes spoke of having a three-pipe problem, a puzzle that needed the contemplation of three pipes to solve it. So, a three-pipe problem. I wondered if I might make a three-pipe poem, and I wrote one in lockdown about how my enforced solitude was not solitude at all, but an invitation to a richer, deeper communion. So here's that final and third of the poems. A three-pipe lockdown poem. And so my solitude resumes. I settle down to light my pipe and fill the air with fragrant fumes and muse a while till I am ripe with mellowed verse and emptied time is ready to be filled with rhyme. Ranged on my shelves in patient print, old poets keep me company. One phrase of theirs might be the hint, the prompt for some new harmony. Their echoes in my mind repeat, and their old meters keep the beat. For in my mind their minstrelsy is somehow kindled and renewed, as Andrew Marvell stands with me in my delicious solitude. I smoke a pipe with Tennyson, as Larkin nods to Betjeman. Their echoes in my mind repeat, their cadences still fill my soul, call me to capture, to complete, to make my broken verses whole, to draw their courses where they run, and mould the many into one. So, help me, my old Peterson, and let your incense still inspire. Smoke sweetly till my task is done, your bowl aglow with friendly fire, until I bring in true repose my three-pipe poem to a close. And I'll bring this essay to a close by saying that when the smoke ascends from my pipe, it's always accompanied by a thankful grace. It's always a burnt offering. Soli Deo Gloria. So there you are. It's my little contribution to this new anthology, and I shall very much enjoy reading all the other essays. So thank you for indulging me and sharing in the burnt offering, as it were. It's good to see you again, and I hope you're able to pop around again soon. Thanks.